بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. Begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the compassionate, the merciful. We ask that He send peace and blessings upon our noble and our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. So, alhamdulillah, this is our second lesson in the text Durus al-Tawhid, lessons in monotheism or lessons in divine oneness. There's probably more than one way that you can translate Tawhid. And we talked a little bit last week about the discipline of Tawhid. What is Tawhid? What is Aqidah? What is Ilm al-Kalam? What is Usul al-Din? That these are generally different words that have different linguistic meanings, but when they use them for the discipline, they essentially mean the same thing in terms of the definition of the discipline. And then we talked a little bit about the historical development. And the reason we mention that is because in our day and age, there's some dispute about that. So today, inshallah, we're going to begin the actual text. And inshallah, the great thing about this text, as you'll see, is that it gives a good summary of the discipline right at the beginning of the text, which is really beautiful by the author. I did share a partial translation of the text through C.D. Patrick, but I think I left a little bit out, so there are going to be some corrections that are sent out to you, and I have the text in front of me, both of my notes, and in front of the actual text here as well, inshallah. So we begin, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Durus al-Tawhid, and our author, Habib Muhammad, begins his text with Surah Al-Ikhlas. He begins with Surah Al-Ikhlas, actually a part of the text. In other words, he began his text after the Basmala with Surah Al-Ikhlas. So it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, say He is the one, He is God the one, God the eternal. He begot no one, nor was He begotten. No one is comparable to Him. No one is comparable to Him, right? And this chapter of the Quran, this surah, really summarizes our belief system. Really summarizes it. And then he goes on with the opening supplication, which we won't do too much of, because if you're in the Risala class, if you were in the class earlier with Sheikh Abdul Kareem last semester, you went through a lot of explanations of this, but he begins his text with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'een. To proceed, he says, praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Lord of the worlds, and prayers and peace be upon our Master Muhammad and his family and his companions and those who followed them. And then this is the section that's left out of your introduction, which I'll add for you here. He says, وَبَعْدُ فَهَذِهِ دُرُوسٌ مُخْتَصِرَةٌ فِي عِلْمِ التَّوْحِيدِ لتلامذة السنة الثالثة والسنة الرابعة من المدارس الابتدائية طبقا للمقرر والله المسؤول أن ينفع بها ويجعلها خالصة لوجهه الكريم. To proceed, these are short lessons in the discipline of Tawheed, set for students in the 3rd and 4th years of elementary school, in accordance with the prescribed curriculum. Allah is the one who is asked to benefit through these lessons and to make them for His sake alone. So Habib Muhammad wrote these after being asked to set some lessons in Aqidah for 3rd and 4th graders in a Sharia environment. On one end of the spectrum, don't feel bad, because this is a Sharia curriculum and environment. So they're learning Sharia from the very beginning and up. And then on another element, we should feel bad that we don't know enough about our religion and that we do have to learn these texts. But you'll find in this text particularly, there's a lot of benefit. So don't get too down on ourselves. Inshallah, Allah will benefit us with what the little is that we're learning. And then he goes on and he actually defines Tawheed, which we already did. So we're just reading through it. He said, علم التوحيد هو علم يعرف به إثبات العقائد الدينية بالأدلة اليقينية. He said the discipline of Tawheed is the discipline through which we know how to affirm the creed of our religion through proofs that engender certainty. Right? Which we gave you last time, right? Ilm al-Tawheed is the discipline through which we can affirm or confirm the creed of our deen, of our religion, through proofs. that then engender what? Certainty. Okay? So all of that should be kind of like, we've already done it and we just rush through it because there's not a lot new that I've given you. But we're going to begin, inshallah, with the new lesson with this part of the text. So after the introduction and giving you the name of the discipline and telling you why he wrote the text and give you definition of the discipline, he begins with what's called أقسام الحكم العقلي. And remember, I told you in class last week that generally Aqidah texts, as small as they might be and as large as they get, generally, not always, are in 4 sections. The first section we can translate as sources of knowledge. The second section is on Allah, divinity. The third section is on prophets, prophetology. And the fourth section is on matters of faith. They call samariyat, right? So, in order to understand why Habib Muhammad places this here for adults of your age, you might want to ask, why is he talking about propositions, rational propositions, aqsam aqliyah? Why is he talking about that? Well, because if you're going to say, we know that Allah exists, we know these things about Allah, a very important question is, how do you know? Right? How do you know something is true? So we're not going to get into that here. This isn't a intense theology class. It's not a philosophy class. It's not an epistemology class. But you have to know he mentions this for a reason. And generally, our ulama generally say there are 3 or 4 ways to know something. Let's start with the way, not the first one that they mentioned, but the one you and I are most aware of. Okay? The one that you and I are most aware of is essentially empirical knowledge. I know this microphone exists because I see it, I can touch it, it's in front of me. And science, not all science, but generally, scientific study is just a form of what we can hear, see, taste. Right? It's just a much more advanced way of doing it. Right? We can measure it more. Right? Because this is the measurable world. Right? That's not a definition of science, right? I'm just giving you that. You might be asking yourself where science fits in, right? Science fits in really under this branch, right? It's something you can see, you can hold, you can taste, right? Your senses can interact with it. The second form of knowledge that you might know of, and you might not have ever thought of it as a form of knowledge on its own, but you're aware of it, is transmission, history. Because that doesn't have to be through something that you can measure. Although modern historical forms rely heavily on empiricism, the ancient world and some of history now doesn't rely upon that. We know that something occurred because it was transmitted to us that it occurred. We might not have any evidence that it occurred, right, other than transmission. Right? A third type of knowledge that you're probably less aware of, unless you are, a philosophy student or someone who's maybe just, reads up a lot on their own, is, or a mathematician, that would help, is rationally you can know things are true, right? So we know 1 + 1 is 2, not by measurement or by transmission, but through rationality. And then the fourth way of knowledge that is people are even less aware of is you know things experientially. You know things are true experientially. Right? And really, those 4 things really summarize how we come to know things. Right? How do we come to know something? We know it either because it's measurable, right, through our senses, or because it was transmitted to us, or because it's rationally so, right? We can use our rationality to reach that conclusion, or we can use our experience. So in the science of Aqidah, as I alluded to very briefly last week, but I'll highlight here, how do we reach what we have in our aqidah? And how do we engage this discipline? Both through proofs that are transmitted and through rational proofs. This class is not going to focus on rational proofs, little to none, right? This session. Next session, next time you take Aqidah, maybe a little bit of that. But you do that more as you get more and more advanced through the books. You don't just jump into it. You kind of learn it slowly, right? We're going to focus more on transmitted proofs, right? Which are also important because you're not only interacting with people who have no faith, you're also interacting with people in your faith who say, well, why do you believe that? Right? And you say, well, the Quran says this. Right? Okay, so he says, our author says, أقسام الحكم العقلي are the following. So the types of rational propositions. Al-hukm al-aqli is a rational proposition. Right? The author says, أقسام الحكم العقلي or الحكم العقلي ثلاثة أقسام. Rational propositions are of three types. Necessary, impossible, and possible. وهي الواجب والمستحيل والجائز. That means a rational proposition has to be necessary, impossible, or possible. And you're going to say, well, what does that mean? Well, he's going to explain it to you in the text. Allah reward him. He says, what does necessary, impossible, and possible mean? So then he says, معنى الواجب والمستحيل والجائز. الواجب هو الذي لا يتصور في العقل عدمه. Right? The necessary is that which the intellect cannot conceive the absence of. Something that is rationally necessary, the intellect can't even conceive of its absence. Meaning that its absence would be incoherency. And as you'll come to know, that the only rational necessity is Allah. Right? The only thing that our brain rationally finds necessary, right, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The impossible is that which the intellect cannot conceive the existence of. There's no way the intellect can't rationally conceive of. Somebody can get the door for whoever's. Okay. Now, this is very important, brothers and sisters in faith. What he's not saying is what we're not aware of, or it doesn't usually happen, or scientifically probably won't occur. That's not what he's saying. He's saying rationally, right? For example, can the microphone both exist and not exist? That's incoherent, right? It either exists or it doesn't exist, right? But to both exist and not exist is impossible, right? But a better example, as you'll come to see, is someone to say that God has a beginning. It's impossible, right? For a lot of reasons that we'll get into eventually. All right. The third type of rational proposition is the possible, that which the intellect can conceive both the existence or the non-existence of something, right? For example, does this microphone have to exist? Does it have to be here? No, of course not. Can you imagine a world without this microphone in front of me? Of course, right? Of course. So does that make sense? All rational propositions are either necessary, impossible, or possible. Okay, now it'll get into the content of the class, because that is kind of like a introductory note for him to be able to say the following. So then he goes on to say, may Allah reward him, وَيَجِبُ عَلَى كُلِّ مُكَلِّفٍ أَنْ يَعْرَفْ مَا يَجِبُ فِي حَقِّ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. It is an obligation on every individual of legal maturity, every adult, legal adult, right, mukallaf, that they know that which is necessary regarding Allah Most High. So he just defined necessary, right? He just defined it a moment ago. And we have to know what's necessary regarding the messengers. And we have to know what's impossible with regards to Allah and what's impossible with regard to the messengers. And what is permissible with regard to Allah and what is permissible with regard to the messengers. And like, if we had to say like a very like cursory summary of what's in Aqidah, that's basically Aqidah, right? Aqidah is, our books of Aqidah are generally what is necessary that we believe about Allah. What is it necessary that we believe is impossible about Allah? Like, what do we have to believe is impossible about Allah? What is it obligatory for us to believe is necessary for the prophets? What is it obligatory for us to believe is impossible for the prophets? And the possibilities for both, right? And this will make more sense as we go forward. So, what he's going to do here, and this is basically what the content of today's class is he's going to summarize those things, right? Before he gets into step by step, he'll just tell you this is what they are. This is a big, what do they call that? A bird's eye view, right, of what you have to believe. So he says, first, with regards to divinity, with regards to Allah, a general summary of the necessary, meaning what we have to believe is necessarily true about Allah, exalted is He, is the following. فالواجب في حقه تعالى إجمالا اتصافه بكل كمال. In general, what is necessary to believe with regards to Him Most High is that He is characterized with every perfection. Every perfection, Allah is characterized by it. And he says, فَإِنَّهُ خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ بِيَدِهِ مَلَكُوتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قديم فلا ابتداء لأوليته باق فلا انتهاء لآخريته. So he says, our author, after he says in general what is necessary to believe with regards to Him Most High is that He's characterized with every perfection and that He created all things. Everything is in His dominion. He is beginningless. So there is no beginning to His firstness. And He is endless. So there is no end to His lastness. Right? So that's a summary. And that's straight from the text. So you have the text. That's directly from the text. Right? So that's general. Okay? That's a general summary. Now he's going to tell you, okay, now I'm going to specifically delineate for you what you have to believe about Allah before I explain it. So the author is going to explain it. But right now he's going to what? He's going to delineate it for you, which is useful. So he says, الواجب في حق الله تعالى تفصيلا. So first he said what's necessary for Allah in general, what you have to believe, and now he's going to say in specific. والواجب في حقه تعالى تفصيلا 20 صفة. In detail, what is necessary, what in specific, what is necessary to believe in regards to Him Most High is 20 attributes. There are 20 attributes that you and I have to believe about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Most High. Now, those of you who were in the class last couple years ago, or were in my Risala class, you'll be like, wait a second, I object, Taysir. You said 13. Well, inshallah, I didn't forget to mention to you that some phrase those 13 as 20, as you'll see. There is a look, 20 is more common in the books. But 13, there's a way, kind of like a shorthand way to put it, that it would be 13. And you'll see when we get to it why it is, right? I'll just give you one example. It's the difference between saying, for example, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has omnipotence, power, and He's almighty, right? It's just a different way. It's a different grammatical structure for the word, and one entails the other, right? So some people summarize it as 13 by taking those that can be summarized two different words into one and saying 13. And some said, no, you got to say that one and that one, right? And so we'll get to that point, inshallah. So the point is, I hopefully didn't cheat you by telling you it was 13. Some of the books mention it as 13, and many mention that as 20. So here he mentions it as 20. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on Habib Muhammad's soul. So he says, they are. So he's just going to list them. Okay? And I'm going to list them now in English, but I'll come back to them in Arabic and in English when it's time to go through them each, right? Existence. That's 1. Beginninglessness. That's 2. Endlessness. That's 3. And you might be saying, well, what does that mean? We're going to come to it. Every class, we're going to go through a list of them. Number 4, dissimilarity to all that which is created in time. Dissimilarity, you could say to created beings, but to all that which is created in time. Because everything's created in time, right? that's 4. 5, self-subsistence. 6, oneness. 7, omnipotence. And if this is the first time you've heard this word, it's basically the term that they use in theology for all-powerful. Omnipotence. You spell it omnipotence with a C. That was 7, right? 8, will. 9 is another fancy word, omniscience, which is spelled omniscience, right? And it means all-knowing. It's a word that they use in theology for all-knowing. Omniscience. 10 is life. 11 is hearing, the attribute of hearing. 12 is the attribute of sight. 13 is the attribute of speech. So that's 13, right? So that's basically what I gave the people who were with us last year and what you got in my Risala class, right? Now he's going to give you the other 7. You're going to see how they're essentially a different way of putting it and important to also affirm. So that they usually phrase it such that Allah is all-powerful, willing, knowing, living, hearing, seeing, and speaking. So you notice how those last 7 that just repeated, right? He has the attribute of sight, and he's seeing, right? He has the attribute of hearing, of hearing. That one you can't. It's the same thing, right? He's hearing. He has the attribute of speech, and he is speaking, right? Right. Okay, so those 20 are the 20 things. There are some of the 20 things that we have to believe about Allah. Now, it's important that I highlighted some. It is important that you highlight some because they don't mean these are the only things you have to believe about Allah. These are some of the things that you have to believe about Allah. Why did they pick these 20? Is because they consider them to be the ummahat. I don't know of a good way to really translate the ummahat, but they're kind of like the core attributes, right? And don't try to visualize space, right? They're the central attributes. They're the attributes that all other attributes basically stem from, right? Okay, so you told me, Taysir, that we have to believe what is necessary, and we have obligation to believe what is impossible. What are the impossible attributes? Well, they're just the opposites of everything I just told you. So the opposites of what I told you are what? Impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm going to list them, and we'll go through them when it comes time. In general, what is impossible in regards to Allah Most High is every imperfection. So remember how we said in general everything we have to believe Allah is that every perfection, He's characterized by every perfection? Well, in general, what's impossible for Allah is any imperfection. Meaning that any attribute that indicates an imperfection with regard to Allah Most High is not appropriate for His majesty and His greatness. So it must be negated, right? We have to negate it. And it's impossible that He be characterized by it, Most High. Like what? Like non-existence, inability, ignorance. He is above all of this, far, far above it. Right? So that's in general what's impossible for Allah. Now, just like our author gave us what's in general mandatory and obligatory for us to believe about Allah, necessary, then he gave us specific, he's also going to do the same with the impossible. Now he's going to list the 20 opposite of the first 20 that I gave you. Right? So these are the 20 characteristics that are impossible. These 20 attributes are impossible for Allah Most High. What are they? Number 1, non-existence, which is obviously the opposite of existence. What's the opposite of beginninglessness? Having a beginning. That's number 2. What's the opposite of endlessness? Having an end. So that's impossible. We said He was dissimilar to any being created in time. What would be the opposite of that? That He be, God forbid, right? Similar, created in time. We don't believe that. That's impossible for Him. That He be similar to any being created in time. That's number 4. Number 5. We had said that He is self-subsisting. Right? So the opposite of that would be that He need another, which is impossible for Him. That He need any being, animate or inanimate. Number 6, we had said that He was one. So what's the opposite of that? Multiplicity, which is impossible for Him. Number 7, we had said that He's omnipotent, He's almighty, all-powerful. What's the opposite of that? Inability. That's impossible for Allah. Then we had said, we're at number 9, right? Mine are not numbered, so yeah. Wait, no, that was 6, 7, 8, right. Number 8 was will. What's the opposite of will? We don't really have a good word for it, but being forced. Karaha. Number 9, we had said He's omniscient, He's all-knowing. What's the opposite of omniscience? Ignorance. It's impossible for Allah. Number 10, we had said He has the attribute of life. What's the opposite of the attribute of life? The attribute of death. And then we had said, number 11, that He has the attribute of hearing. What's the opposite of the attribute of hearing? Deafness. That's impossible for Allah. And then we had said He had the attribute of sight. What's the opposite of the attribute of sight? Blindness. And then we said He had the attribute of speech. What's the opposite of the attribute of speech? Muteness. To be mute. And remember then we said such that He is, and then we listed the 7 again. So now you're going to say such that He Most High is not what? Unable, forced, ignorant, dead, deaf, blind, mute. Allah is above all of this, far, far above it. Okay? So it's just the opposites. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. And this is straight from your text. So I'm just kind of elaborating on what's in the text, but it's straight from the text. Allah reward him. Habib Muhammad really because he's taking the most important part and he's just putting it in there, right? Telling you this is the most important part. Okay. Now, this is what we'll end with, inshallah, and then take questions. What about what is possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Most High? What is possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Most High? So there's really one statement that summarizes it. وَالْجَائِزُ فِي حَقِّ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى صِفَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ. One attribute. وَهِيَ فِعْلُ كُلِّ مُمْكِنٍ أَوْ تَرْكِهِ. What is possible with regard to Allah Most High is one attribute, and it is doing any, you can put in brackets, rationally possible thing or leaving it. The reason we put rationally in there is because it's intended. And the other reason that we put it in there is because people misunderstand. They think possible means humans walk on the earth. So it is impossible that humans fly in the sky. No, that is not impossible. That is actually rationally possible. We just don't generally fly in the sky. Actually, we do now in planes, but we don't without planes, right? So what they mean is that it's a rational, any rationally possible thing, meaning Allah could have created us flying in the sky, right? He can do anything and not do it, meaning he didn't have to create us, right? And many, many other things that he didn't have to do. And there are many, many things he did not do, and everything you see in front of you is his act, right? So, he says, our author, it is possible with regards to him Most High that he do what he wills of the realm of rational possibilities and leaving of them what he wills. That simple. Very, very brief statement, but very all-encompassing. So I'm going to take questions because, I know like the first time I learned this stuff, it was really like overwhelming. But know that the rest of these classes, the whole point is we're going to take each one of those attributes and we're going to give you the verses of Quran from it, right? We're going to discuss it more in depth. So maybe it's better if you ask me clarificatory questions that are not like, can you explain this attribute more or this? It's fine if you do. I'll give you a general answer. But we're really going to do that over the next probably 7 sessions. I'm going to try to finish in 7 more sessions as opposed to running the whole 12 weeks. Because last time we taught an introductory text, we did it in 12, but that's because we kept it going longer. Like you could probably do everything in 9 sessions, but we ran at 12. So this time I talked to Sheikh Abdul Kareem. Rather than running the full 12, we could probably finish this text in about 9. Inshallah, we'll see. Don't like hold me to that, but we'll see. Inshallah, we should be able to finish it in about 9 sessions. Inshallah. So, walhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam ajma'in. So, does anybody have any questions?
These the only possible characteristics?
What they're saying, about necessary and impossible are not the only ones that you have to believe. They're just some of them. Right? With regards to possibility, this is the singular possible attribute that they mention. Right? In other words, Gopi, you and I could think of other things that are impossible for Allah, other than the list that we came up with. Right? Because it's any imperfection. Right? And we know of other necessary attributes from the Quran and the Sunnah that Allah has, other attributes. Right? We know them. They're listed in the Quran and the Sunnah. But they're not in the list, right? Because these are just the most important ones that they're mentioning for the context of the class, right? But in terms of possibility, as an attribute, right? It's the act of doing any possible thing or not doing it, right? Any other questions? I'm happy you don't have questions. That's good. Well, you do have to, inshallah, think about this stuff. Look at the text. I really hope you read that article that I'm pretty sure, Patrick, we sent it out and we put up in the classroom, right?
Yeah, so everything's being posted to Google Classroom.
Okay.
Because this semester there's a lot of supplemental materials.
Sure.
But just not to clog everyone's inboxes.
Good.
We haven't been sending them out to the announcement.
To announcement list.
So if you need
Yeah.
files, they're going to be on the Google Classroom.
So I'm going to repeat that for the one student who's online. They are on the Google Classroom. I sent to Patrick for this specific class, I think 3 or 4 different documents. One of it is just a brief translation of what we've done today. One of it was from the Risala class. I had kind of like a summary of Aqidah that was on there. And then we also sent Sheikh Nuh's article, Kalam in Islam. And that is a really good article, like especially for your age group. I wouldn't give it to like some 4th and 5th grade as what this book is for, right? But for your age, it gives you an explanation. He does a very good job, Sheikh Nuh of explaining what is Aqidah, why do we study it, what are its positives, what are some of its fears. And I also sent, we sent also a link to Habib Muhammad's biography from Muwasal. And then inshallah, I will send you any corrections or translations. I'm keeping the translation going as I go through it and edits, so that next time we teach this class, it'll all be available, inshallah. Any other questions? Great. I'm very happy that we finished early and we got through it. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi sahbihi sallam ajma'in. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He teaches of our religion that which benefits us, and that He fills our hearts with knowledge and with light and with love. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He teach us about Him, of His attributes and His actions, and He fills our hearts with certainty about Him and about that which He's obligated us to know. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgives us for any sins that we've committed, that which we're aware of and that which we are not. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam ajma'in. Al-Fatiha.